But at the end of the day, they can get rid of you like that.
These super rich CEOs saw their wealth grow by 48%, or $658 billion in 2023.
So layoffs hit employees who suffered, but tech companies did well in 2023. Well, what about 2024? So far in 2024, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet or Google have all added over 20% to their stock price, and Meta added a whopping 65%. So, why is everyone complaining about finding a job? Isn't tech doing really well? Aren't they hiring? Stick around and I'll tell you what's happening with tech jobs with real up to date data to back it up. I'll also demo some tools you can use and talk about how employees who want to work in tech should position themselves for what's next, especially with AI. But first, let me take you back about 25 years so you know where I'm coming from. When I started out as a clueless employee, I stepped right into the tail end of one of the biggest tech bubbles ever from 1997 to 2002, the dot-com bust.
On Friday, the 10th of March in the year 2000, the Nasdaq hit its then all-time peak. Investors were all in on companies that were ready to take advantage of the internet, and the speculative mania was so fierce that just the mention of .com in their company filings was enough to send their stock price soaring. Eventually, this all collapsed, and only a select few companies from that era have survived to this day. The reality was that the internet was an amazing technology that would go on to change our lives and facilitate some of the most valuable companies in history. But just putting a normal business on a website wasn't actually revolutionary. What came after was a genuine golden era of tech services. The companies that survived the dot-com bubble were actually useful, and the cleansing of the market meant that more talent and investment could go towards supporting companies that actually did provide a good service.
Yep, I was cleansed out of the market faster than yesterday's bad burrito clears your system. The bomb dropped. I went from more job offers I could count to without a job in not much more than 1 year. Lesson learned, you have to be in your toes in tech. If you work in tech, or if you work in any industry really, it's important to know how economic systems work because it should be a big factor in how you make job decisions. I'll explain this right after we look at some media clips to recap what happened and how we can learn from it and position ourselves for the future. As they say, those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it.
Free food, recreational facilities, a $2,000 annual travel stipend, and even coverage for gender affirmation surgeries for employees. These are just some of the lavish benefits that tech giants like Google, Netflix, Airbnb, and Pandora use to offer their workers. But it seems this has come to an end. After the financial crisis of 2008, the U.S. Federal Reserve slashed interest rates to near zero levels, keeping them there for years. This low-cost capital environment allowed both tech startups and established giants to expand rapidly. Netflix, for example, saw its stock value increase by over 4,000% during this decade. Companies were not the only beneficiaries. Working at one of these tech companies became a way to get rich. Employees often received a significant portion of their compensation in stock options. As tech stocks rose, workers increasingly enriched themselves. However, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic marked a turning point for the industry.
The start of the COVID-19 pandemic was a dire economic event, at least at first. The tech industry, though, boomed. In 2020, tech's top 7 companies added $3.4 trillion in value. The Fed's emergency moves to bolster the pandemic-hit economy, like cutting interest rates to near zero, helped boost tech stocks. This move helped the tech industry to expand and went on a hiring spree as people were confined to home. Amazon added the most number of employees during this golden period, peaking at 1.6 million employees in 2021.
If you rewind before the layoffs, all the tech companies were really putting an emphasis on growth. And so capital was really cheap, so you could get loans, you could get money, access to capital was really affordable. And then you see as interest rates went up and you start to see that growth in headcount didn't translate to growth in profitability and access to capital became quite a bit tighter. You saw many companies start to hit the panic button. And so we saw these thousands and thousands of people get laid off all at once. And that was quite a shock.
Okay, So, what happened with interest rates after the 2008 financial crisis and the eventual swing back led to mass tech layoffs recently. Let's make sure we understand this to learn from it. Economics is complicated, so I can't cover every detail in this video. But a simple way to think about this is that when interest rates go down, investors pile into what are considered risky assets and look for growth. This means that companies can easily get money to invest, stock prices of tech companies go up, and investment means more jobs. When interest rates go up, the opposite happens. Borrowing money is more expensive, stock prices go down because demand for products and services decreases, and jobs are cut to reduce expenses. You can see on the graph here that the stock market and also the job market tends to move in the opposite direction of interest rates. Interest rates have been higher the last little while to reduce inflation, but the big question is, what's next? No one can predict the future, but the Federal Reserve has cut interest rates already and has said they will cut more in the future. So, what this means for the job market is that things should improve. Okay, let's take a look at real time data to see what's really happening with tech jobs. Trueup scans tech job data in real time. It's a great tool to help you find your dream tech job. As always, I put links and sources in the video description. The number of open jobs in tech is still way down from the peak, but it is steadily increasing. Interest rate cuts will further accelerate the trend, so I expect the overall tech job market to slowly improve. This data is great. You can even see trends on layoffs, hottest companies, sectors, and locations. Looking through the data, here are my top 3 high-level job market trend takeaways. Number 1, there's a shift to hiring more senior people. Junior level positions are being squeezed by AI and by laid off senior level people who are now accepting lower level positions. Number 2, remote job postings are going to go down from a peak of about 24% to 19% and continuing to shrink. Number 3, the top 5 places to be for tech jobs in order are the San Francisco Bay Area, so Silicon Valley is still number 1. Second is New York City. Third is Beijing, China. Fourth is Seattle. And fifth, Bengaluru, India. If you look at the hot tech companies, a lot of them are in AI. So now could be a good time to think about moving into something a bit more riskier like an AI startup.
There's no question artificial intelligence will remake the workplace.
Artificial intelligence could replace millions of jobs.
AI could replace 300 million full-time jobs.
All this investment in creating AI jobs, but at the expense of others. The recent report from Indeed shows that the number of job posts containing GenAI terms has been surging.
So there's about a 500% increase in the number of jobs that mention generative AI. There's about a 6,000% increase in the demand from job seekers for these jobs. But there still is, I think, a mismatch the other way in that the total amount of demand for AI talent far outstrips the number of AI professionals.
So you think AI has already hit the business effectively?
Oh, absolutely. Especially in the tech sector. I mean, they've been talking about it for years now, the fact that you have more companies moving toward artificial intelligence, and they're looking at the fact that as opposed to paying somebody $200,000, $300,000 a year to do the job, I can actually use artificial intelligence to do the job that they used to be able to do.
This AI thing is real, it's not going away, and they can't have people holding them back. And so what they've been doing over the past year is finding places within the organization that they can trim so that they can get to a pace where they're shipping faster. So taking managers out, and then engineers who are skilled for a previous generation of technology, they're also leaving to make room for people who are more skilled for artificial intelligence.
Now, for those of you who aren't using AI, what are you thinking? Some tough love. You must use AI every day if you want to stay competitive, even in your current job. I do. That image in the thumbnail with the mushroom cloud? I could have asked an artist to make it or paid for a professional stock image, but instead I got ChatGPT to make it for me in a few seconds. That graph I made with interest rates and NASDAQ 100 returns, ChatGPT made that for me in a few seconds with just a one-line prompt. If you want me to make a video on how you can use AI every day, let me know in the comments below. And like I said earlier, now could be a good time to think about moving into an AI role or even an AI startup.
But while layoffs have taxed retrenched workers, a booming artificial intelligence market is giving the industry a renewed sense of optimism.
I have been in San Francisco for almost 12 years now, and I have never felt this kind of energy. And I was here for the mobile boom, right? I worked at Uber, which I think was the one company representing that mobile explosion. And I can tell you it was nothing like this. Every cafe, every restaurant, every conversation that you overhear in the street, half of the time it's ChatGPT, it's AI, it's the latest company that is being funded. It's exhilarating. Steve Jobs said that computers were like a bicycle for the mind. I think that AI is like a jumbo jet for the mind. I think it is going to radically change how people work and go about their lives.
Generative AI could add as much as $2.6 to $4.4 trillion to the global economy annually.
I think counterintuitively, it is actually going to result in a net increase in employment in the tech industry. It's a basic fact of economics that when something becomes cheaper, its complement becomes more valuable. Tech workers are a complement to AI. AI makes tech workers a lot more productive. And so when something becomes a lot more productive and a lot more valuable, we want more of it, not less.
But a word of caution also. Here's a look at the hype cycle for generative AI. The hype cycle is a good framework to think about how disruptive technology waves happen. I've been through a few of these, like the dot-com boom and bust. It usually has 3 phases. Phase 1, initial excitement and buzz builds around a new technology. There's usually big investments and big IPOs around this time. We're somewhere in phase 1 with generative AI. Phase 2, companies realize the technology is harder to implement than expected, or the results aren't as good as anticipated. Basically, they realize it was overhyped and investments are pulled back. Phase 3, organizations eventually get real benefits and then their approaches are used by other businesses. It's possible we are at or near peak hype, but we'll only know for sure in hindsight. When the bubble bursts in new technology, there's usually a lot of fallout, and most companies in AI will end up failing. But if you're in a position to work for a top AI company and take some risk, the skills you get would probably be worth it, and you can eventually take that to your next role, even if the AI company you work for doesn't end up doing well. So you really have to think about what's best for your situation and how much risk you can take. But remember that sometimes doing nothing to keep up with change is the riskiest thing of all. And that's all we have time for in this video. For more tips that I can't share here, feel free to subscribe to my free newsletter in the description. And if you found this video valuable, please like and subscribe. Until next time, stay savvy, my friends.